So here's another DIY from the retired guy. Today's project is changing transmission fluid on a 2015 Honda Odyssey, and you don't really change it, you just introduce new fluid. I think the whole transmission, torque converter, and the oil pan holds like 8 or 10 quarts, a lot, but the oil pan only holds 3.5 quarts. I've done this I think 2 or 3 times. So you drain 3.5 quarts out and you put 3.5 quarts back in, and what I do is drive it for a couple days, a week, and then come back in, drain 3.5 quarts out again, and then put another 3.5 quarts in. So how do I know the transmission fluid needs to be changed? Because I get this, Honda calls it a judder, J-U-D-D-E-R. There's a service bulletin out for this. It's service bulletin 17-043. And it reads, it's 2014 to 2017 Odyssey judder from the torque converter lockup clutch. And if you have this judder, you know it. Mine happens about 25 miles an hour. I've got speed limit of 25 miles an hour in my neighborhood, and there's a hill that I go up. And when I go up that hill at 25 miles an hour, I get this, it's I don't know, it's between second and third gear or third and fourth gear, but anyhow, it's kind of irritating. But the service bulletin, there's a service bulletin out. So, and if you have this judder problem on your 2014 to 17 Odyssey, you know it. I mean, you'll feel it. But the background on the service bulletin, and I'll put a picture of this in the video, but it says, a judder from the torque converter lockup clutch may be felt while driving between 20 and 60 miles per hour. The problem is typically diagnosed as a bad torque converter. American Honda investigated the judder and found that the torque converter was not causing the judder, and the transmission is not damaged by this judder. The judder was caused by deteriorated transmission fluid. The transmission fluid deteriorates quicker than expected when it is exposed to intermittent high heat loads under specific driving conditions. Basically, that's all the time. These transmissions run hotter than they're supposed to. I put a transmission cooler on mine when I bought it. I bought it with 46,000 miles on it. I don't know if that helped or not, but last time I changed the transmission fluid was when I bought it, 46,000 miles. I put the transmission cooler on, and now I've got 105,000. And the judder just recently started getting more and more noticeable, say in the past 2 months. So basically they're saying it's deterioration of the transmission fluid. It's not detrimental. The judder is not detrimental to the transmission. So basically I just kind of learned to get off the gas and feather the gas a little bit till the judder goes away. And you folks that have experienced it, you learn how to drive with it. It doesn't hurt your transmission. You don't worry about it. But their fix is a software update is available to maintain the transmission fluid temperature within the desired range under all driving conditions and eliminate the potential for this judder. So I chose not to do the software update because, in my opinion, the original design was designed for all conditions. Now they're trying to do some kind of workaround for this transmission fluid deterioration. My fix, I thought, was the transmission cooler, but again, my judder came back, and I was only able, like I said, I only do this change, this 3.5 quart mixing with the new stuff 2 times. So I'm only introducing 6-7 quarts of new transmission fluid. If you do the math, my transmission fluid is probably only 70% changed at that point. So yeah, I'll put a picture of this service bulletin out there. So for me, it lasts about 50,000 miles. The transmission fluid, I just came back from the dealer. I only buy my transmission fluids from the dealer, Toyota, Honda, whatever vehicle I'm working on. I don't mess with transmission fluids, introducing other brands. I don't have the time to research. And for 69 bucks I bought 7 quarts of transmission fluid. It's not worth my time to try to figure out what might be a compatible transmission fluid. Transmissions I don't understand transmissions, and I don't want to understand them. I'm not going to go study them. There's a lot of rubber in them, and these these companies design fluids for their specific transmission, so I never mess around with anything but OEM transmission fluids in any of my vehicles. And that also goes for coolants. Same thing, I always put the OEM coolants in my vehicles. Engine oil, I don't worry about engine oil. I put whatever, synthetic. An engine to me is an engine, but so that's the job for today. It's pretty easy. Like I said, I've done it a couple times this is the second Odyssey I've had. And I'll show it step by step. And I am doing this on my car lift today, which will be easier to do in film, but you don't need a car lift. I've had a car lift for exactly 6 months. I worked long and hard to get to the point where, I could afford a house that, had a nice sized garage with a car lift in it. So for 35, 40 years, I did all my service work on the ground on ramps. And I've done this transmission fluid in my driveway. You can get at the transmission plug without jacking it up. I don't remember how hard it was, but it was probably 3 years ago. So, 58, 59 years old at the time. And I don't remember it being a problem. Here's all you need to do, your transmission fluid change. On my case, 2015 Honda Odyssey. The transmission fluid pan holds 3.5 quarts. So I changed it out twice. So I used 7 quarts. 17 millimeter socket, 3/8 inch drive ratchet. The extension, this extension was perfect. It's like 9.5 inches long. And then it's a half inch drive extension. So I did have a reducer down to my 3/8 inch 17 millimeter socket. So my overall length was, closer to 11.5 inches. And that was a perfect height to get the breaker bar on. The breaker bar it was a perfect height too for clearing everything. 16 inches long. Swivel head is, I think, a must. And then the funnel, this funnel is also perfect length. It is 16 inches long, and it jams right in the hole between the hoses, and it's flexible enough you can squash it a little bit to get it next to the brake fluid reservoir. So that's the funnel. It was perfect for this job. So that's all you need. Simple. I think it's easier than changing oil. And like I said, I've done it without even putting the van up on ramps. I was able to reach under and drain the transmission fluid without even putting it on ramps. I have the luxury now of having a car lift, so because I'm a retired guy, I'm not going to pass up the chance to use a car lift. So that's the tools you need. So the transmission fill plug is, I'll back this out and show you exactly where it is, but it's a 17 millimeter, kind of down behind a couple hoses. You don't have to take anything off to get at it. So the fill plug is straight down here, 17 millimeter behind these 2 hoses. So again, crack that loose before you go any further to make sure you can get it off. Okay, make sure you're square on the nut. And I put anti-seize. Last time I took this off, I put anti-seize on it because the first time I did it, the first time I ever worked on it, I had to put so much torque on it. When it finally broke loose, it kind of snapped and hurt my wrist. So we're gonna break this thing loose. And hold down on it so it doesn't, you don't want to strip this bolt. You strip it, you're in trouble. See what I mean? When for some reason, I guess because you have so much extension on there, there's a lot of energy transferred up that wrench. So get ready for a big pop when that thing breaks loose. So that's my extension, 10-inch extension or 9-inch extension. And then I didn't have a half-inch drive, 17 millimeter socket. The normal 6-sided socket, I've got 12-sided, which I don't like to use. So the only 6-sided I had was 3/8 inch. So this is a reducer from half-inch down to 3/8 inch. So the whole thing is 11 inches, and that was a perfect size to get my breaker bar right at the top of just where I need it to get enough room to get my hands in there and get enough leverage on it to break it loose. So my breaker bar is 16 inches, half-inch drive, swivel. You don't have one of these, get one. I use this all the time. And an old neighbor of mine, God rest his soul, gave it to me because I didn't have one 20 years ago. But yeah, this is a must-have. Works great. I don't know what brand it is, but SK Tools. But yeah, there's all kinds out there. But get the swivel end. In this case, I had to swivel it back just a little bit to get enough clearance to get enough leverage to break that thing loose. And here's the plug. It has a washer underneath it, and you can see the copper anti-seize that I put on last time I installed this. So I think it broke free a little bit easier. Not sure, but I'm gonna again put copper anti-seize back on it when I reinstall it. Okay, so the transmission drain plug is right here. It's, as you can see, really close to the front of the vehicle. So, like I said, I've done this without jacking the car up. I've slid under there and reached under there and was able to get the plug out without jacking it up. And I think that got more fluid out. Basically, you just take a 3/8 inch ratchet and no socket. Anything, you just stick a 3/8 inch ratchet in there. I'm using a breaker bar just because I don't want my wrists snapping. I'm an old guy with arthritis, so. And I put it in last time, so it should not be super tight in there. And I probably didn't need that breaker bar, but so that's all there is to it. And it's a good tip to capture your oil. So I've got a pan on top of my oil tank here, so I can measure how much I take out and just put the same amount back in. So I don't know how far this is going to shoot out, but hopefully not too far. And it's on the warm side because I drove and got the transmission fluid about 20 miles. It's been sitting for about 45 minutes since I got back. And there is a aluminum gasket underneath the plug. Yeah, it's kind of watery, so got a little splash. And I'm expecting about 3.5 quarts. And that transmission fluid doesn't look, super bad. There's 50,000 miles on it. It's not, it's still got a red tint to it. It's not like black. I'll let that drain for a little bit and reinstall the plug, and then lower it down and put new fluid in it. Okay, there's the plug. There really wasn't any fines on it. It was in good shape. And the aluminum gasket is is in good shape. I'm not gonna replace that. There's no deep grooves in it. Somewhere along the way, the automotive world started calling these gaskets crush washers. And this is a crush washer. It actually crushes and puts a little torque on the threads of the plug. But these are gaskets, and they don't, they do get a little groove in them. I've been reusing these for 30 years. I've never had a plug, drain plug, transmission oil leak in 30 years. If they get real bad, I've got a box of these copper ones in my toolbox, and they're made by Dorman. You get them at the auto parts store, and they're called a gasket. All right, pretty much drained out. Wipe this off. Back in with the plug. And you don't need to be a girl on these things. You'll know when it kind of settles in. Right there, that's good. And especially if you intend to do DIY on your vehicle, you're going to be the guy taking it off. There's no reason to put a breaker bar on that thing and crank it down. I think this is aluminum, cast aluminum. So you're going a steel bolt into aluminum. You don't want to be boogering up those threads. So don't over torque it. But you just shove it. You got to push this tube over, this hose, and until you get it, you got to get it below this lip on the car. Okay, I measured what I took out. It was about 3.5 quarts. I do have a transmission cooler on this with about 8 foot of 3/8 inch hose, plus the cooler itself probably holds about 4, 5, 6 ounces. So I need a little bit more than standard if I didn't have the transmission cooler. So I'm going back in with 3.5. Like I said earlier, I only use the Honda oils. So watch what you're doing going back in with this. The worst thing that can happen really on any job is to drop this plug and having to find it, and then fish it out if you do find it. So before you reach in there with the plug, know which route you're going in. Get it in there and do not drop it. Oh, I'm going by feel. To get my arm at this angle, I can't get my head in there, so. Come on, baby. Whew. So I'm always relieved when the threads start and I haven't dropped the plug, because I've dropped a lot of stuff down in motors. In fact, this one has, this motor, I dropped a window washer cap down inside. In fact, I can see it from up here. It's down inside the bumper. I'm not pulling the bumper off to get it. And I also have a piece of a funnel that's used specifically for coolant, changing your coolant. And last time I did the coolant, that popped off and is down in there somewhere. I never did find that, but yeah, that's one of my worst worries, losing stuff in the motor. All right, so that started. Let me get my wrench down there. So you have to muscle those rubber hoses aside, but you want to be on the outside of the steel. Looks like there's some kind of vacuum line. Okay, get that on. And again, this swivel helps a ton with getting it on and off. Okay, again, make sure you don't strip it. That's good. And I'm going to run these 3 gallons of coolant or antifreeze transmission fluid through here for probably a week. So I'm really just snugging that down. And probably if I was doing it permanent, I might go a little tighter, but I'm coming right back out with that in a week and draining 3 more quarts. Draining it down again and adding 3 new quarts. The guys at the shop will do this. You don't do it, I guess just run the motor, warm it up, and then dump it. So to me, it's just easy. This is easier to do than an oil change. So I'm gonna drive for a week, pull it back in here, and then dump another 3.5 quarts. And I only do it twice, and that'll be it. So that's it. It's an easy job. To me, it's easier than doing an oil change. You don't have to mess with an oil filter. But yeah, it's not, if you have the right tools, and it's not complicated tools, you get this extension, and like I said, that drain plug is very accessible, and it's just a ratchet, you know, a 3/8 inch ratchet head. So it's not a bad job, and definitely a DIY job. And if you're gonna continue to do your DIY work, invest in 20 bucks. You can have, if you don't already have these extensions and the breaker bar, go ahead and get them. So yeah, there it is. Good to go.